Welcome back to part 2 of our delicious conversation with Dr. Kyra Bobinet. She is the author of a brand new book called Unstoppable Brain. It's a groundbreaking neuroscience book for me and you, for everybody, not just for somebody who's deeply into neuroscience, but to actually understand why we sabotage ourselves. The first part of the show was fascinating. I promise you, if you missed it, you got to go back. We talked a lot about how the brain is actually working, what it is. I mean, you're very familiar, I'm sure, with this idea of dopamine and how dopamine is it's important, but it's so secondary compared to this part of the brain that we're looking into here and the things that happen as a result of it and the impact of your early childhood on creating something that I call your emotional logic and how it's creating these associations you have between things that your brain says, oh, don't go there, that's a bad thing, even when it's something you want. So we're going to dive deeper into all that. We're going to dive into the impact of this part of your brain called the Habenula, how it impacts your motivation, how to take a little more control of it, become a little more aware of it, and how it's impacting us in a cultural sense, politically, and driving us in ways that may not be so great, what we can do about that too. We're going to dive deeper into that. I want to talk about it from a point of view where we finished off last time, which was this idea of addiction. Because I think that there's a lot of talk around addiction and a lot of misunderstandings about it. Our mutual friend and I, Dr. James Doty, talking about this part of us that is trying to ease the pain. One of my quotes around when I speak around the brain and neuroscience and addiction, I say, please understand everyone you meet is in some kind of pain and trying to feel better. Whether you pass them in the alleyway and you judge them because they've got a needle in their arm, or whether that's a person who's volunteering 6 days a week at the church, it looks better and socially it's more acceptable for sure, but it's still feeding the brain in the same way, as in, I don't want to look at my shit, so I'm going to go over here and do this. And sometimes it's stuff that gets applause in the world when you get another $1 billion in the bank. And sometimes it's something very destructive or societally destructive. Let's look at this part of the brain from a place of addiction. I think you can explain that to us much better.
Yeah. So this is hot off the presses because the new model for addiction is literally the last 2 years emerging in the science of the Habenula, which is that the Habenula is now considered the source of that pain that Jim Doty talked about. Like everybody's in pain and they try to numb that pain. And then when they numb that pain, and they get off the substance, whether it's a phone, whether it's social media, whether it is sex addiction, whether it is a chemical addiction, whether it is workaholism, it doesn't matter. It takes no prisoners. When we don't have our placating drug that helps us numb or distract ourselves from our pain, this area of the brain is the one that puts the hurt on us.
Mm-hmm.
And the more hyperactive it is, the more shrunken it is from being addicted to something, because we can actually shrink it by being addicted and saying, shut up, shut up, shut up. And it's like, okay, it gets kind of like puny. It's like the brakes going out in your car and then your behavior goes unopposed. You can't stop yourself anymore from using the addictive substance. And so modern thinking around addiction and how that's working in the brain is this like dopamine balance. For every 1 point of positive pleasure, I get 2 points of pain. And that's why pursuing dopamine is a losing proposition.
Yes.
Because the math doesn't work out. You keep falling further down into the negative space. And so knowing about the Habenula, knowing that it's the source of doing this is empowering, because now we know what to do. Because we know the Habenula is turned on or activated by feelings of failure, negative emotions, disappointment, frustration, those kinds of things. And if we weren't already focused on trying to get that dealt with in therapy or whatever other ways that we do that, it really shines a light on how important it is to really neutralize the failure fires that are going on inside of our perceptions, inside of our emotional states.
Just to make it clear, this is not going to get fixed by positive thinking.
No. I think positive thinking can be one way that people can like fake it till they make it. Or if you're naturally optimistic, it actually does help to not focus on your Habenula. And also if you're naturally pessimistic, you're going to have more habenula activity. You're going to have more depression, more addiction as well. So I think that whatever it's going to be in terms of the paradigm shift, in terms of the inner work, in terms of restory, reframing, those are all tools, but we haven't really been serious enough about that because we didn't know that this will take over everything. It'll take over everything that you wish you would do and kill it. It will drive you into depression, anxiety, obsession, addiction, emotional eating, all those kinds of things. And I find it fascinating. There was this one study about people who did bariatric surgery and they had shrunken habenula. Like anybody who has an addiction has a shrunken down habenula. It's weaker than it should be.
Right.
And when they got the surgery, over like 6 months, their habenula returned to normal size. So the hope there is that when you can turn it off and not have it be so like, stop hurting me, when it's not so beaten down, that we are resilient and we do have the ability to be neuroplastic and our brain will return to a healthy state when we stop with the addiction. And that's what you could interpret there is like people who got the bariatric surgery, they didn't get to carry out their addiction as much. And so their addiction was at bay and the overall homeostasis, the balance with their habenula and their dopamine kind of restored back to normal.
But that sounds like a dog chasing its own tail, meaning I'm supposed to give up the addiction to help my habenula, but my habenula keeps me in the addiction. And what's more is we know from research that the transference of addiction, i.e., I used to be addicted to cocaine, but now I only smoke pot. Well, now I stopped smoking pot, but now I only drink. Well, now I stopped drinking, but now I only, there's some other, right? It's like trying to fill the hole constantly because that pain, quote unquote, the emotional pain is still coming up. So help us understand that because it feels like, okay, well, they had the bariatric surgery, you've got the band around your stomach or whatever it is, so you're not eating as much. That's great. But now you're smoking 40 a day or whatever it is. So help us to understand that.
Yeah. And a lot of bariatric surgery leads to alcoholism.
Right.
So there's that connection that's already been established. I think it has to do with turning into the pain in the way that like we have a lot more tolerance for exercise related pain than we do for withdrawal pain because we freak out with withdrawal pain. We're like, oh my God. But if you're like, no, this is natural, it's necessary, it's normal to feel this pain. And here's how we're going to support you. You're not alone. You talked about the individualism. Part of what we do is we abandon each other. When I am trying to get off my device and I'm actively, this is one of my addictions that I'm trying to get off of, there's nobody around. And then I'm sitting with my discomfort of being alone and my loneliness comes up. And then I'm all itchy because my habenula is like, nobody loves you. And then I like reach out. And so we're not used to being vulnerable around our psychological pain in a way that doesn't like overwhelm others, make us feel like a victim or needy or too vulnerable that we're uncomfortable. So I think that's where the skill building needs to come. I think that's kind of what you're pointing to in some of the work that you're also doing is to build up that ability to not freak out when psychic pain arises.
Yeah. And I think you've made a point about something that's vitally important, particularly in a post-pandemic world. I've talked about COVID and the pandemic as being the great reset. Psychologically, it was the great pause, and it stopped us from running on the bloody treadmill we were on, and we paused and went, what the hell am I doing? And we began to question our values and like, why the hell am I fighting for a bigger house and a better car that I'm never going to be in? And that was great. That was the good part about it. The shitty part of it is that we stopped having the kinds of relationships we had. We stopped having the bowling club or the whatever club it was in.
Yeah.
We stopped having community. And the problem is, yes, we've reset a lot of our values and we've moved out to the country as opposed to living in the city. We're not working 70 hours, but we're also not going out. We're not interacting in the way. And so when these emotional pains, this psychic pain comes up, there's not someone at the bowling club or the flower or the bridge club or whatever the hell it is club that we're in to go to. So help us with that, because I think that we came out of this individualistic drive that was crazy. I've got to succeed at all costs, which was so ego driven. We had this reset around, oh, maybe I don't really want that. But now there's this stuck in the middle of I'm left with these people who don't really stimulate me or no people, and I'm just on the device. Help us understand that a little bit more.
Yeah. And what if this is all just a giant chess game with oxytocin? And what I mean by that is I have been saying for years that we live in an oxytocin deficiency syndrome society where we are isolated, where we are not getting nutritive social interactions, but very fast foody kind of social interactions. And we're getting sicker and sicker and sicker with the opiate rates, with the suicide rates, with the just loneliness rates, which is the deadliest disease of all, more than diabetes or cardiac. And so we are reaching a point of such pain where we've got to turn it around. I see the tide turning. I saw 12-step people who struggle with narcotics and alcohol outside of a church when I was walking with my husband downtown Santa Cruz the other night. I talked to a 30-year-old woman this morning who I give all of my puzzles because I'm a jigsaw puzzle freak. I give her all of her puzzles. She has housemates, 5 or 6 of them. And then they have their friends come over and they just have it laying out on the table. And people just come and they just puzzle. And it gives the shy people a way to be okay with the social anxiety. I think this is the time of the connectors. I think this is the time of the people who are the social engineers, the storytellers, the party throwers, the people who are going to mobilize and connect people locally and across interest areas in a positive way. So I think that all of this, like fast food, in the same way that, why did we not all get hooked on McDonald's 3 meals a day? All of us, even though that's the most addictive food. It's because there's a part of us that feels the vacuousness of it. And we can only take so much. And then we're like, I got to go see the sunshine. I got to go try. I got to do something. And unfortunately, not everybody makes that turn. But that's kind of how I'm seeing it right now in terms of our point in history.
But you said something interesting there. You said you think that the tides are turning. I will say very clearly, I hope you're right. I just don't see any evidence.
I do. In the same way that I saw in the 80s to 90s, because I was a fast food addict, there was more like chatter among the people. Like, maybe this isn't good for my body, or maybe I'm not feeling well, or Supersize Me came out. Like those kinds of things are these sea changes. And I see the awareness starting to rise up that we're not just like freebasing all this stuff and not thinking about it. The science is coming out, the chatter among us is coming out. Just look at parents looking at their children. They're like, my child's in distress and I need an answer. And those mothers are serious about that. And so there will be a corrective force. To your point, like the thing that is the headwinds for that is our addiction to digital stuff. But, the United States was largely a bunch of drunks back in the 1800s. So we have done this before. We've done this before where we've kind of come out of like a mass addiction to something and a mass predation of ourselves or cannibalism of ourselves, socially, economically, all those things, because we are learning these patterns and the patterns are spinning in our heads, and the brain is still going to be informing us that, hey, this isn't working out for you to keep doing this social media thing or keep doing this multiplayer shooter game. You still got to interact with people because you're not going to get the life that you want.
Well, as Jonathan Haidt said in his book, this is an entire generation of anxious kids who don't have the same social skills. And this is my concern is as they move forward, Gen Z are already in their 20s. Millennials are already in their 40s. I used to think of millennials as like those kids. They're in their 40s. And so understanding that those generations that are growing up with this level of anxiety, I'm concerned about how do we get them out of that? Because, again, using neuroscience, the reticular activated system of their brain is looking for that which is familiar. And the familiar is shitty. So it's just looking for more of the shitty and keeping them in this loop, this cycle of, just to make it clear for everybody to understand what the reticular activated system is. If you bought a new car and you bought a Toyota, as an example, and you drove your new Toyota off the lot, you were like, wow, there's a lot of Toyotas, right? You never noticed them before. And it's not that there were suddenly more Toyotas that day. It's your brain is now paying attention. And again, when I talked about emotional logic, your brain is paying attention to that which is familiar to you. So if you grew up with a dad who was a shitbag, you might be looking for shitbag men because that's all you can see, or whatever it is. That, in a sort of contemporary context, is the right are crazy, MAGAs are all crazy, or the left are all crazy because they want everybody to have some strange pronoun. So it seems like, because we're bombarded through the social media to feed that part of our brain, it seems like that's the part of our brain then that is then feeding this shrinking of the important part of our brain that you're talking about. That's so important.
No, I'm not saying it's not dangerous and it's not going to create a lot of suffering before it gets better. What I'm saying is that the implicit memory system that is the mathematician in your mind of like, how many times does this work out versus not? Does this match that? The pattern recognizer within each of us. I think enough people are getting saturated by the feedback loop of, I'm doom scrolling, I feel bad. I'm doom scrolling, I feel bad. I'm doom scrolling, I can't feel good about myself. Or with the dating apps, one of my kids is on dating apps and she's like, they don't work. I said, yeah, because they've been based on how casinos cause people to fail. It's gamed against you getting success. So get out there, go to things in person, put yourself out there. At some point, you have to do what's natural. And so I think having this knowledge that oxytocin is running things, and GLP-1 is a daughter molecule of oxytocin. So what does that tell you? That tells you that we're injecting something that we naturally should be producing by interacting with each other, even if those interactions are uncomfortable. We're just not willing to train with the pain, train with that anxiety.
Do we need to go back to speed dating? But not romantically.
Yeah.
I'm just saying socially. Do we need to go back to speed dating socially, as in, I'm anxious, so I don't want to have lunch with you. I don't even want to have coffee with you. I want to spend 3 minutes with you to find out if there's something we could talk about.
Yeah.
Like, it might be a good idea that we need speed dating for social anxiety. It's not about dating. It's just about being able to look in somebody else's eyes and go, I'm really uncomfortable here. And the other person going, yeah, me too. All right, let's get rid of these 3 minutes. Oh, actually, you're okay.
Yeah. I think within a container, the thing I like about what you're saying is that within a container where somebody kind of gives everybody the rules, kind of like the jigsaw puzzle. Like, here's the rule. We're all going to work on this jigsaw puzzle. And that way people can feel comfortable interacting and nobody feels like a wallflower in a strange party, that there's something to do. So I think that's called behavior design in my world. And some people are just naturally good at this. And that's why I say the connectors, the conveners, the people who can connect people to do things and like create event planners and things like that at the local level. Those are the heroes right now, in my opinion. Those people that kind of like say, you know what? Let's cut through the crap. I have a friend in town. She has this women's group that goes out and does this nature walk. And we kind of look at plants a slow way. And we've been rained out forever. Those kinds of people and those kinds of events. I just signed up for a pine needle basket weaving class yesterday because I saw it at the state park that I go walk in with my husband. So I think it's just like knowing that if we don't do this, the only alternative is to be addicted. If you don't do this, you will become an addict and incapable of getting what is in you. I like the Gnostic proverb, what's in you must come out or will kill you. That has to do with addiction. It has to do with your gifts. It's indifferent to positive, negative. But in this case, if somebody's not able to express their life because they're so caught up in their addiction, then they're going to feel miserable all the time. So that's a worse feeling and a worse fate than having to go to a party and be uncomfortable. Ultimately, I think that's how it bears out.
And at the same time, though, we're back in that loop again, which is, I know this is bad for me, but I can't stop doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not saying there's not going to be a co-presencing of those two things, toggling back and forth in the brain. It's all about how can you turn off your habenula as quickly as you can? Not judging yourself for how long it took you, but just what can I get myself to do? What little thing can I get myself to do? And how often can I repeat that before I hit a bump, before I hit my habenula again? And then how can I iterate? So in my research, the most hopeful thing was that we found that people who got long-term change, who kept going when other people got stuck, use something called iterative mindset. And this is it's not growth mindset. It's a unique mindset that's more powerful than growth, more powerful than learning, more powerful than resilience and grit, more powerful than performance-based goals. So we've tested this in thousands of people and done the validated research because I wanted to know that I wasn't like just making up Kyra's little quaint advice for people. I really care about it being brain science with legs that really matters and that really works in people's lives so that it's generalizable. And so iterative mindset is, instead of setting some perfect plan or some perfect goal, you saw it as an experiment or a practice. That was just a paradigm shift. And then the second part is that instead of failing, you iterated. So iterators never fail, is what I say. And you never hit ground as long as you can iterate one more time. Even if you're a quadriplegic, you iterate by putting a paintbrush in your mouth and now you're a painter. There's always a way to continue to explore, to learn, to try. And if we think of it that way, it protects us from our Habenula, full stop.
I really wanted to understand that myself. And I think this was my way of understanding. I'm not saying it's the way, but it was thinking of it as a software, that there is the original, right? And then you have a new iteration of that, which is 0.10, 0.20, 0.30, whatever it might be.
Exactly.
And that's the next iteration. It's not that the first one was wrong or bad. It was just the iteration. And now you're iterating to the next level of whatever is. So it's never a fail. It's just, now how do I bring up the game? How do I lift my game upon that? And I really loved that. And I thought it was much better because I think it's easy to go, it's a closed mindset or it's an open mindset. No, this is that iteration of it. And sometimes my default system goes back to an early iteration. And it's like, oh, okay, it just went back there. Oh, yeah, but I now know I'm at 3.0. Oh, I can go to that. All right, let's try that. Yeah, I thought it was really good. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's a really important piece for most people to understand. Who did you write the book for?
Humanity. I believe that humanity has gotten ourselves into a bit of a pickle at this point. And in order to meet the moment of chaotic and rapid change cycles that are happening, whether it's our climate, whether it's our social structures, whether it's our political stuff, whether it's our biology and our food system, that the only way that I could see that working out for us as a human species is understanding how our brain works in this one way that has been escaping us until this point and diverting us into addictions and self-blame and failure and stuckness and disempowerment. And then also digging our way out and being able to keep up with things through iteration. Because AI, which a lot of people are afraid of, was born of iteration. It was actually cultivated out of iteration. They took thousands of cycles and whichever AI was iterating the right direction, they trimmed that one and they pruned the rest. They discarded the rest of the bots, if you will. And then the only ones that survived were the ones that were the most iterative.
That's a really good example. So when you think about this in the context of the political climate of what's going on socially, what's your thoughts of it in that context?
Well, you named it. The oxytocin is kind of in our way because we need to broaden our idea of what it means to be in a group. And your worldview being just defined by a party, which, by the way, is not uniform anyway, because there's a bunch of people under that umbrella who are wearing that color or that team jersey, but don't have all the same beliefs. They might have some modicum of overlapping beliefs, or maybe in most cases, they have a Habenula hit against an imagined opponent that has these other beliefs. But if they start digging in, absolutely invariably, they find that that's not true. And so it's a laziness that we have of just like convenience, like I'm going to just objectify you as this, and then I can like not have to spend any more neuronal power on you. and just move on with my life. And then there's other people with like larger circles of concern. Well, I'm concerned with all of my local community, or I'm concerned with my state, or I'm concerned with my nation, but only my nation. Oh no, I'm concerned with human species, but forget the animals, even though I depend on bugs and animals and plants to live. So there's different developmental capacities, if you will, to say, that is me. That is me. And stretching that muscle of what is I'm considered me is the way to getting better at that.
My original background where I started out was in metaphysical studies. And it's fascinating to me because I'm not officially, but I'm a lay neuroscientist.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's so fascinating to me that it's gone full circle.
Yeah.
Whether it's talking in quantum physics or quantum fields, which was talked about in spiritual terms forever, or whether it's understanding that we're all earthlings, whether you're a bug on the back of the piece of wood, or whether you're the person wearing a red hat or a blue hat, we're all earthlings.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that requires us to get out of our smallness. And as we move into ideas of othering, we move into ideas of being smaller rather than larger. You can be against globalism and all those kinds of things from an economic point of view, but you can't change the fact that we are living on the same rock and that we are interacting with each other, and we need to have what I call generous curiosity, which means you look like my enemy, and how are you just like me?
And part of the failure diseases that I go through, or that I notice in my research, is all or nothing thinking or black and white thinking.
Yeah.
And so I think that developmentally we have, because of our brains are flooded with so much information and so much stimulus every day, I think one defense mechanism is to go into a black and white state and a all or nothing state. But it's true. When I talk to people up close, no matter who they are, everybody's got good points.
Of course.
Everybody's got really good points. I'm like, you're living it. You're right that happened that way. And also there's this other perspective from the other person's point of view to also incorporate in your thinking. You think you can do that. You know, there's so much, we're under communicating with each other basically, because we're all stuck on the one directional conversations on our phone. So the more we do that, the healthier it gets, the better it gets. And what's true is that we can't be idealistic. There are murderous assholes out there. There are people who are scammers, and because that's where they're at. And having dealt with prisoners and people who did hard crimes, really did a lot of pain and hurt and suffering, there's still a good part of them, weirdly. And that shocks people that like, oh, they just want to dismiss somebody as wholesale bad or wholesale good, like you're talking about with the church lady before. It's like, no, church lady goes home and does weird things like to her cat. You never know.
We have to remember that every human being is multifaceted and that there is a shadow side of everybody. Part of understanding how to manage this part of your brain is to actually do the self-inquiry into your own shadow, because then you'll find what's actually pulling you under. Until you can look at the person you dislike and see yourself in them, you'll never really get to grip of that part of who you are. And you'll struggle. It'll make life harder, not easier. It's really important for all of us. We are right at the end of the show, Kyra. It's been an absolute joy. I want to thank you. It's been amazing. Please tell people where they can find out more about you, about your new book, about your website, and all the different resources that you have available.
Yeah. So drkyrabobinet.com is where you can find the book. Also on Amazon, of course, Barnes & Noble. And then my company is FreshTri.com. On both my personal and business, there is a free quiz called Iterative Mindset Inventory. And that's something that we put through a very rigorous scientific process. And for free, you can find what portrait, where your iterative mindset is, how strong it is, and also get a bunch of directions on how to enhance it further. And so like what it's about and how to translate it, and kind of just see yourself in this new mindset that is coming out. We're publishing a lot of papers on it as well. So that'll be coming out as a tool for people as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. I hope you'll stay with us to the end. And I want to remind you that if you didn't catch any of that, don't worry about it. We'll make sure that all of those URLs are posted in the show notes, including social URLs. Will all be there. So if you, for some reason, missed it. And remember, if you're in part 2 and you didn't catch part 1, go back. There's so many gems in both of these episodes. For those of you who really want to evolve yourself, remember that those who control the meaning for the tribe also control the movement of the tribe. Leaders committed to positively shaping the political and business landscape know that they must tap into what drives human behavior. I'm Dov Baron. I show businesses, teams, and leaders how to harness their emotional source code to move their tribe, because unified actualized meaning is a single monolithic difference between mediocrity and greatness for individuals and for companies. Remember, we need your help in staying relevant, so please go to wherever it is that you tune into the show from. Do us a favor, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. It makes a huge difference, and we really appreciate it. And for those of you who are regular listeners, thank you for being a regular listener and for sharing the show with everybody you know. Till next time, stay curious, my friends. Stay curious about how that emotional pain inside of you is just a warning system. It's okay. You can come to peace with it. You can sit with it. You don't have to let it sabotage you. You are much more powerful than your mind would let you believe. There is within you greatness. Stay curious about what it is and how not giving into the familiar could really make a difference, not only in your own life, but in the lives of everyone you touch. I'm Dov Baron. I'm here to assist you tapping into your deepest meaning to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, in your life, and your leadership impact. And I am out.